And here we have f of x is cotangent of x, and we want to get the derivative of cotangent of x. And recall that the cotangent of x is 1 divided by tangent of x. And so now we're going to use the quotient rule right here to get the derivative. So f of x will be 1, and then g of x will be tangent of x. So we have tangent of x, and then times the derivative of 1, and then minus 1, and times the derivative of tangent of x. And dividing by tangent of x squared. The derivative of the constant 1 is 0. So we get 0 times tangent of x, which is going to be 0. And then minus 1, and we just did this one. The derivative tangent of x is be secant square of x. And then the bottom we have tangent square. So we're getting negative secant square of x and tangent square of x. And then we can simplify this a little bit. Recall that the secant is 1 over cosine, the identity. So we have negative 1 over cosine squared of x. And then tangent square, tangent is sine over sine. And then we can, this is the same as negative 1 over cosine squared. And recall that dividing a fraction is the same as multiplying the reciprocal. And so the reciprocal will be cosine squared of x, and then sine square of x. And the cosine square here, they will drop out, and what's left is negative 1 over sine squared. And this would be negative cosecant squared. And then recall that cosecant x is 1 over sine of x. So what that means is cosecant squared of x is 1 over sine squared of x. So that's what we have here. The negative is the negative, and then 1 over sine squared is cosecant squared. So the derivative of the cotangent is negative cosecant squared. And now let's do the secant. So the secant is 1 over cosine. And again, we'll use the quotient rule. So the g of x will be the cosine of x, and then f of x will be 1. And so we get cosine of x, and then times the derivative of 1, and then minus 1 times the derivative of cosine of x, and then dividing by cosine of x squared. Derivative of the constant 1 is 0. 0 times cosine of x is 0. And then right here we get negative 1 times derivative of cosine of x is negative sine of x. And then the bottom we get cosine squared of x. And then the top, negative 1 times negative sine would be sine of x. And in the bottom we have cosine squared of x. And then we can simplify this a little bit. And then right here we're going to rewrite this as secant, as a sine. We can write this as 1 over cosine of x, and then sine of x over cosine of x. So 1 times sine of x is just sine of x, and then cosine of x times cosine of x is cosine squared. But 1 over cosine of x is secant x. And then sine of x divided by cosine of x is tangent x. So this is the derivative for secant of x. So the derivative of secant of x is secant of x times tangent of x. And then the last one we will do, so we did cotangent, we did secant, now we will do cosecant. So cosecant is 1 over sine. Cosecant x is 1 over sine of x. And then we'll use the quotient rule right here. So f of x will be 1 and g of x will be sine of x. So we get sine of x and then times the derivative of 1 and then minus 1 and then times the derivative of sine of x, and then dividing by sine of x squared. Derivative of the constant 1 is 0. 0 times sine of x is 0. Derivative of sine of x is cosine of x. And in the bottom here, we get a sine squared of x. So this becomes negative cosine of x, dividing by sine squared of x. And then we can simplify this a little bit. We can write this as 1 negative 1 over sine of x, and then cosine of x over sine of x. Negative 1 times sine of x is negative cosine of x, and then sine of x times sine of x is sine squared of x. 1 over sine of x, that's cosecant of x. And then cosine over sine, that's cotangent of x. And that's the derivative of the cosecant. And this is what we got. So the derivative of cotangent of x is negative cosecant squared of x. The derivative of secant of x is secant of x times tangent of x. And derivative of cosecant of x is negative cosecant of x times cotangent of x. And then also earlier we did derivative sine of x is cosine of x. Derivative cosine of x is negative sine of x. And derivative tangent of x is secant square of x. So these are the derivatives of the 6 trigonometric functions